Hey, how's everyone doing? Welcome on to this episode where we're going to be talking more guitar. Today we have Daniel Serriff. I'm going to share a bit about Daniel. Daniel was born and raised near Charlotte, North Carolina, exposed to a diverse catalogue of music from an early age. At 13, he purchased his first guitar and began cultivating a passion for the instrument and learning a wide range of music. After studying privately with a variety of teachers, he was honoured by being accepted into the University of North Carolina School of the Arts in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, as a high school senior. After freshman year in the jazz studies program at the University at Greensboro, Daniel returned to UNCSA. He went on to earn a Bachelor of Music in Guitar Performance, studying the classical and jazz idioms. Daniel attended the University of New Orleans on a full ride scholarship for his Masters of Music and graduated in the spring of 2020. Now, Daniel has studied privately with many instructors, including Tom Quayle, Brian Seeger, Ralph Bowen, Eric Gales, and he's attended masterclasses with the likes of Pat Mehany. I hope I'm saying that right, not butchering the name. Sean Schofield, Bill Stewart, Joe Beck, Joe Satriani, only to mention a few. You can find out more about who he studied with underneath this video. So, Daniel, I want to welcome you along. We're chatting for a few minutes, but it's great to have you here.
Awesome. So glad to be here, Dave. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh man, pleasure, pleasure. So I've really enjoyed checking out your channel, and we'll talk more about that at the end. And there'll be a link below this video for anybody to check out your own work as well. You've a really cool YouTube channel.
Awesome, man.
So,
Thank you so much.
so when it comes to teaching guitar, let's say about beginner guitarists, what's the main struggle you see players challenged with nowadays learning?
Yeah, I think I think there are definitely a few things. I think one thing that when I work with my guitar students, I often see is like the disconnect between the two hands. You know, that's one of the hardest parts to kind of get together at first.
Yeah,
Um, And so I kind of try to get students kind of from studying classical guitar. You know, classical guitar, it's like kind of some of the stuff that you do. You know, these acoustic guitar things with lots of voices, melodies, different bass notes moving around, all this different stuff. It can be like really challenging. And so what I frequently do is I get students playing some right hand alone, some left hand alone, and try and like isolate the hands and then put them back together. And that's kind of like what I initially learned when I was in classical guitar school. It really helps.
nice, nice. And I'm noticing going through the list of guitarists, like they're now I don't recognize some of them, but I'm definitely going to check them out. Um, how did you find your classical guitar experience translated into electric guitar when you're talking about the two hands?
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. So I studied classical guitar kind of as I never particularly was deeply in love with it. I kind of studied it because, you know, growing up, people are like, "Oh, a classically studied musician or whatever." It's like, how do I, get better at music? Well, you study classical or jazz or whatever, some of these higher art form music, so to
Yeah,
speak. Um, and so, so like nowadays, like if I'm applying it to say standard six string acoustic guitar or the electric guitar, I play with a pick most of the time, and so I'll work on things or give to students exercises, things like, okay, so we need to be able to hit all the different strings, pretty accurately. So I'll have students do things like, make sure I got some volume. Yeah, there we
yeah, got you there.
go. um, get students to do like hold a chord, say an open chord, that's a six string chord in their left hand, and do like, depending upon their level, say four times each, all downstrokes across the strings. It's a really like basic seeming exercises, but like a lot of people when they first start, they have to look at it and trying to draw kind of that mental map is so helpful, and then trying to like take your eyes away from it, and of course, coming back, right? And I would do kind of a concept that I learned in classical guitar, which is called slowing the rate of change.
Okay.
And there it was kind of the slowest it would be. This is like a really cool exercise where basically you don't necessarily change the tempo. So say the tempo is where I was playing it, like right there.
Yeah.
And the ultimate goal is to go, well, you can slow the rate of change by basically multiplying each little ingredient, right? So I just kind of did it where I would start with fours. So I can kind of have a little bit more time on each piece, and then I would go down to threes, etc., and then twos, to where I'm finally back to my goal of being able to do it with ones. So that's just a little technique. Slowing the rate of change is great, and you can kind of use it whether you're learning a new piece, you're working on your scales, you're working on your chord changes. You multiply whatever ingredient is like kind of challenging you, and then subtract the repetitions as you go.
Man, that's really cool. That's a great tip, man. Jeez, anybody watching, try it out. Like the the thing, all right, what you're saying about looking at the picking hand, I'd noticed so many players in the beginning they obsess with it, and it's like looking down and looking over, and like especially as well when they pick off the string. A thing I find anyways here is that when they pick, their hand will travel far beyond the initial string, and I use like the 1 inch
Absolutely.
karate chop sort of mesh for analogy. I'm like, you can just get it with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I talk about that as like it's kind of like the Bruce Lee punch, the one
Yeah,
inch punch or
exactly.
yeah, correct? And or yeah, just like the idea of economy of motion. It's like that in the right hand, or like, people will have these fingers firing off the guitar really far away after they play them, over here.
Yeah, yeah. It's I kind of call it the opposite of Pete Townsend. You want to go like the polar opposite and just now. Yeah, it is cool. And like, do you find when students do that, then when players are progressing, that they'll they'll then you'll take care of the picking hand first, and then it's the fretboard hand you move on to, or do you try and bring them both up evenly?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So to be 100% honest, I'm not teaching as many like absolute beginners right now. I've
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
gotten more into teaching advanced players, but I still will take on a beginner student, and I love it because it's so different. But I used to teach at the like a music store, and right when I was kind of getting out of college, my undergrad, and I just opened my schedule entirely, and so I had 60 guitar students, and it was kind of like the guitar teaching factory where it was like little 30-minute things, and so I taught a lot of those types of lessons, and so I kind of developed this method where it was like I work on little exercises in the right hand. So a student would go home with, some variation of that exercise. And then, if I'm trying to make it more challenging, get into alternate picking and then getting into string skipping, things like that. And then for like as they get more and more advanced, things like outside inside picking, things like little bits like that we deal with in our right hands that are challenging. So I'm kind of always inching up the right hand stuff, but then definitely like even say for an absolute beginner, they're going to start off with a few minutes of some left hand, probably kind of chromatic like thing. It doesn't always sound that cool to new players, but it's so good to work on, So I
The
try. That's
Spidey
another
ones.
thing. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So like I'm kind of like a heretic because I'm like a little bit like when I went to grad school, I ended up doing all this like kind of scientific like studying and like learning science studying where a lot of people believe that you have to play something 1,000 times in a row or whatever, but all the science says like play that thing a few times, move on to something else, and come back and play it again. It's
Ah.
actually like it's better, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm going to practice this one thing over and over for 20 minutes." And that's kind of like the most useless thing that you could do. All the science says so.
That's cool.
Instead,
I hadn't heard that.
yeah, yeah, actually we can talk more about this later, but I actually
Yeah.
wrote a little thesis, one of my thesis papers on deliberate practice. And it's about like kind of getting away from getting on the couch and just noodling about, like having specific goals. Like, so I remember very specifically I could walk over there to my shelf and pull out these notebooks, and I remember when I was like in school, especially, where I had so much time to practice, I would literally have 2 minute, 3 minute, 1 minute increments, and I would set a timer and I would check them off. And like now when I practice, it's kind of sometimes even shorter than that. Like I'll have maybe say 5 things I want to work on the list,
Hmm.
and I'll hit them just a couple times each. Like maybe it's a really hard lick or whatever that I'm struggling with. I might play that thing 3 to 5 times and then move to something else and then move to something else and cycle through those things and come back. But they say that like um, it's the idea of massed practice. Massed practice is when it's been big chunks of the same thing over and over versus
Yeah.
interleaved practice, which is like bouncing around between things. And they say that actually like the coolest part is that they say that like the getting back the thing, like coming back to it and being uncomfortable and like forcing yourself to figure it out again, that's actually the part that you're learning. It's not
Huh.
the part where you're like over and over and over repeating it.
Okay, man, that's interesting. Geez, I hadn't heard that before that a pro. Like in lessons, like nowadays with attention spans and like everyone's busy on the internet, like I'd set 1 minute timers and just say to a student, listen, just do that and then go back to the next thing. But my own practice, like years ago, it was that thing of hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and it does work, but this sounds
It
like
does
it's
work,
very
yes,
optimized.
absolutely, it works. Yeah, yeah, it's like, and I did hours and hours and hours as well. But yeah, it's like, especially because I work with so many different students, I was like, well, and they're busy, and they're
Yeah.
doing all these different things, and so it's like, all right, they might only have 20 minutes a day, and if they think they have to teach or practice this one thing for 20 minutes, and that's all they can do, that's kind of bad because they're not like kind of working almost a circuit or like a routine enough.
Yeah, man, that's so interesting. And like, let's say, so that's the practice, and then you mentioned like the two hands. And so, if I was a student and I went to you, and with who you've studied with, recognizing some of the names like advanced stuff, and I'm just beginning out, will imagine, and I'm like, hey, I want to learn how to play Surfing with the Alien by Joe Satriani. And how how would you? Because I've still figuring this one out myself, like how to take somebody from the beginning stages. They have this like big desire to play like a crazy tune, and do you get that much when students come to you for lessons?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I think we've kind of been touching on some of it. So what I like to do with students is like I always like to have like say a 5 to 10 song list of like these are my ultimate dream songs,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, okay, we're gonna get there, but you gotta follow kind of my path. And so the path is gonna start out. I'll just walk you right through it.
Yeah, lovely.
So a little bit of like right hand daily activities like and if it's an absolute beginner, I wouldn't even force them to play a chord over here. They would just straight up play open strings, right?
Yeah.
And so we'd be kind of working on these different variations of right hand exercises. That would be like what I would consider their warm up or their little technique practice.
Yeah.
And then in the left hand, you know, I'm, I'm kind of funny, but the left hand, I wouldn't. I really like chromatic patterns, but I don't like the four finger patterns. I think the
Okay.
four finger patterns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then all the other variations, they don't sound like music. But what I like, so the one finger patterns don't sound that much like music either. But the two and the three finger patterns are like exactly what you use in pentatonic scales and full 7 note scales. They're everything you need. So I kind of like push students away from doing the four finger patterns and do more of like two finger patterns 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 2, 3, 2, 4, 3, 4, and then all of those backwards. It's like 2, 1, 3,
Yeah.
1. I consider the different things. But if they were an absolute beginner, I'd actually start them out with one finger at a time and probably toggling back and forth between a fretted note and an unfretted note. So like, say the index finger or one finger, I might have them go through and go like 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, next string. This might be 2 minutes of their practice, but I'd have them go across and then come back, and I'll just speed it up, but I wouldn't have them speed it up. I'd probably have them try
Yeah.
and play to a metronome right away. Or even more so, my favorite is a drum machine.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and then yeah, right. The drum machine is just so much
Yeah.
more musical and fun. So then I'd have them do a little bit of that, right? And then 0, 2. I'm obviously playing it way faster than I would have them play, but and I would do the same thing with 0, 3, and then 0, 4,
And you can hear snippets of songs and riffs kind of come through there at points with the 02, 03,
Yeah,
04.
the music is in there, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes depending upon, you know, kind of what direction we're going, maybe I'll have them play it higher, you know, like and sometimes I'm having them do these things like say the ones and the fours, you know. So like let's say fast forward, I had them working on the single fingers for a little bit. Well, then I'd start to apply things like with two fingers. And like one one that I've been doing with some of my students lately is like um 4010, and I'll do it on a single string. So like,
Quite
and you
thunderstruck
start to
esque.
get here and you're like, it's thunderstruck, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, okay, yeah, there is music in the riffs. But you know, honestly, I don't see that much music or hear that much music in. Now it's funny, I started playing that and that's like a from my jazz, you know, language, that's a Thelonious Monk tune.
Okay. Alright.
A quirky little blues by him. But anyway, like in most of the music, like popular music, like these things, especially the wacky ones, like 2 3 1 4, that doesn't sound like music to me.
Yeah, it's real. I was chatting with somebody on another video about they were talking about mechanical practicing versus the feel and the emotion of it. Yeah, and like that does drop into the mechanical thing, right? You're just robotically drilling things. Which yeah,
Totally. I think a little bit of that is really good because we have to learn how to move our fingers and we have to learn how to move them efficiently. And we were talking about like, okay, well, like, how do I get somebody's hands to sync up? Well, that's a pretty darn good way to do it. So that's like a 1 3 pattern going across, and I'm
yeah,
alternate picking. And then, you know, if they're struggling with it, I would apply that idea of slowing the rate of change. In that instance, I could slow the rate of change by multiplying each note. So maybe I go, or I multiply each string. So I might go, stay on the same string,
yeah,
where the ultimate goal potentially would be to be able to fluidly go like, right? So,
yeah.
okay, sorry. So, yeah, so we were talking about the right hand and left hand. I would have them do a little bit of that stuff every day, just a little bit. Again, like maybe a couple different exercises, 2 to 3 minutes each. But I'd have them keep it on their practice log for like a couple weeks, you know, and check in with them every week and be like, okay, cool. Like, how's that feeling? Are you getting better at it? Are you doing it every day? Even a couple times a day at different, you know, morning, midday, night, like whatever.
And do you log the metric of the progress? Is it done via metronome markings or the general feel of it?
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So I think it's a mix for me. Um, like I want to know where the cap is, you know, where it starts to fall apart, and then
Mm.
I want to practice a little down from there. Um, but say, you know, if somebody was trying to work on speed, I would sacrifice clarity for speed, right? There's
Okay.
there's this there is actually like more science nowadays that says you can't learn how to play fast by practicing slow. That this is the type of stuff that we preach all the time as guitar teachers, and I did it for 15 years or whatever. And then all of a sudden, there's this great guitar player named Martin Miller who posted a video, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing! Like basically, when you want to play fast, you have to practice fast so that your brain can learn how to chunk things together. You cannot get there by practicing slowly,
Ah,
which which is kind of crazy because it's not what we tell people and it's not what you know. But like basically, it would be compared to like say telling an Olympic athlete who's a sprinter that they need to practice walking in order to get better at sprinting, right?
yeah.
That is exactly what it is. It's like, hey, I want to play fast. And okay, cool. You should play slow first. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't play slow and you shouldn't practice slow. It's kind of like I'm kind of saying like, oh, well, we need to work on a little bit of the right hand, a little bit of the left hand. Well, you need to work on a little bit of really clear clarity But then if you're
Yeah.
trying to get a passage fast or a lick fast, you actually have to practice it fast and beyond your level.
That's cool. I remember like I haven't chatted with other teachers so lately, like the whole process of how we got to the level, what levels we're at. Like with playing, a lot of the time it's unconscious competence because we just did things. And what you said there, thinking back on it, I do remember when I get a new song off my teacher. Like have you heard of Al Di Meola?
Oh yeah, yeah. I kind of grew up on the
Ah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
kind
Lovely. That's, oh
of
man, yeah, dinner music of the gods and race the devil and Spanish highway. And I remember like my teacher gave
Yeah,
that to me, and
totally.
I remember at the time going, and it was as a student, it was, how would you say, there'd be like a week of a period between some songs before I could play them, and this I listened to it and I went, this isn't happening in a week. It's not happening in a month. I don't know what's going to happen. So I do remember like
Totally.
just putting it on and like putting on the tune and just waiting there like the 100 meter sprint final to react to when he starts playing and try it and try it and try it, and eventually it did happen, like, but that's cool, man. It's really cool hearing about the science and the research and the studies you're referencing here. So cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty fun. I read a bunch of books like things like Atomic Habits and Make It Stick and
James
um
Clear, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And there were a few others. They're in my paper. I can probably send them to you.
thank you.
But yeah, all these books and all of it led to like thinking about shorter chunks and kind of breaking some of these ideas that we think we're supposed to do, you know? It's like, oh, I need to get this in my muscle memory, right?
Mm.
Well, now all the science says that muscle memory doesn't exist,
Oh
right?
my
It's not a
God.
real, it's not a real thing, right? So like your fingers don't have memory, right? That's of course coming from our brain.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's this concept that we say and we kind of grow up with, but there's no memory in there. But because we think that, we end up saying, "Oh, I have to repeat this thing 4,000 times to teach my muscles to do it." Well, if instead you've got clarity in your brain, like, "Oh, I'm having trouble with this little passage. What's going on here? Let me isolate the left hand and figure out, oh, it's going do dee do 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 bo be do dee do do. Right? Okay. Oh,
Mm.
how do I play that? Bo dee do do dee do 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 dee do 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 do. Right? I changed the lick because I'm just making it up. But
Yeah.
so then I would say, oh, well, cool. Let me see if I can play that and visualize the left hand. I'll play it in my right hand and visualize the left hand. Boo dee doo do dee doo boo be dee doo 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 doo. Right? And so I'll actually kind of like break the things out. We're talking about left and right hands separately. Like I'll actually try and work on them individually. It depends on the challenge of the piece. It's like when I was in music school recently, in jazz school, some of those like saxophone lead parts are really challenging to play on the guitar. So I would have to really work on the fingering, you know, on the left hand by itself and then try and play it and then I would even play like the right hand in the air and the left hand on the guitar, you know. Do
Wow.
dee do dee do 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 dee do do do. And I would try and get the picking correct. It's
Yeah.
like because you do want repetitions, but you don't really want to. I mean, you probably teach this way too. You don't want to play your mistakes into your playing, right?
That's a common challenge where if you have a student who's like really enthusiastic and they're finding things online, there's a bit of a chance that they'll drill something. And like you said, Atomic Habits, which by the way, I have it here for anybody who
Nice.
is, yes. So for anybody who is looking for a good guitar book, it's like we have this planned. the, this is a brilliant book. It's so good. It's by James Clear
Yeah,
and available in all good bookstores.
it's so good. Yeah, it's amazing how a lot of these types of books, like in the, I mean, I guess some people might call them self-help books, but it's like
Mm.
it's just like getting your brain more clear, and getting I think for me when I was growing up, there were good guitar teachers in kind of like I would call it verbatim music, which is like the classical guitar world, But the people that were around, there weren't any good like jazz teachers, or I don't particularly care about jazz, so to speak, but I like to improvise. I like to
Yeah.
solo. I like to make music on the spot, right? And be able to like go sit in with a band and have never played with them and have a great time. Well, those people were kind of like not around where I lived. And so I was just kind of like shooting in the dark everywhere. The cool part is that because of all my wasted time, now when I share stuff with students, I can be like, "Yeah, you don't want to waste your time with that. Do that." It's kind of funny, but yeah, there's so much like really interesting stuff and kind of non-specific guitar related books like Atomic Habits. Or one book that changed the world for me was this book called Make It Stick, and that's kind of like where the
Okay.
learning science.
I'll ch- I'll
So
check.
if
I
you
hadn't
touch
heard of that
dry,
one.
yeah, I'll send you a list of some other ones if
Thank
you
you.
want to check them out.
Love
Yeah.
to. I read a lot of those types of books, and as you said, it's like a lot of the books can be applied to playing. There's another
Yeah,
good one, the Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, and it's all about like little actions and how they add up over time in terms of practice, like the one,
totally.
2 minute things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we were kind of like, so we talked about the right hand and the left hand things.
Mm.
So then, like, say we're working towards getting to the Joe Satriani thing, right?
Yeah,
Um, so if this is an absolute beginner student and that's their long-term goal, right? We have their 5 or 10 songs that they really want to learn, but it's clearly out of their realm.
yeah,
I would basically work them into, this is what I started doing at the music store was I, I want to teach people songs that sound like songs, but like if people have never moved any fingers before, right? Which is this is so alien to
yeah,
us. Then a lot of times what people do is they start off with these big old chords, like your G's and your D's and your C's,
yeah,
and it's like these people have never moved their fingers at all before. So how are they going to move 4 fingers at a time when they've never moved the one? you
yeah,
know and so what I actually did was when I was starting teaching, it was like prime like rock band and guitar hero time.
yeah,
So I would find all the songs that were kind of like classic rock tunes that were typically on that game, or like at least were really familiar, and I would teach them to the students with 1 finger at a time on a single string. And so, like, let's say Smoke on the Water. So, like, I know that Smoke on the Water is played in the middle 2 strings, and it's like open 3 5, open 3 6 5, open 3 5 3 0. Or he actually might play it across a few strings.
mm, yeah,
Right? But it
yeah,
doesn't matter. That is like such good, like stuck in our brain kind of musical line that is like it's in everybody's deep
consciousness.
mind, so they know it. Yeah, yeah, deep consciousness, exactly right. And so what I would do is I would say, oh, okay, cool, so we're gonna play that and we're gonna use 1 finger. We're gonna start with our first finger and we're gonna play that on 1 string at a time. So I'd get these students to go, and actually I'm all about vocalizing, so they would say or sing
Yeah,
depending. They would go 0 3 5, 0 3 6 5, 0 3 5 3 0. Now a lot of us, especially if you've been playing a little while, you're like, oh well, that's really simple. Well, not for an absolute beginner. That's not simple. And
hmm,
so that's another thing that I would do is I would be like, oh well, you know in order to kind of get better at these small chunks of things, I would break that riff into 3 little sections, right? I would get
yeah,
them first to be able to go, 0 3 5. Okay, let's do some more 0 3 5s and 0 3 5. Get them to do it a couple more times, make sure they really got it. And then again, not too many repetitions, but just a few to kind of program that. And then I
mm,
say, well, let's just play the 0 3 6 5. All right. And, typically they're going to play the 6 5 that fast a little
yeah,
bit wrong. So I'll be like, hey, let's try that again. And then I'll be like, let's put the first section and the second section together. 0 3 5, 0 3 6 5. And then I would say, let's play the third section by itself. 0 3 5 3 0. Now, just to be clear, I'm playing these way quicker than I would actually teach them just
Yeah,
by
yeah,
trying to
fair enough.
get concept. but so then I'd say, oh, cool, and then I'd like mix it up because again, besides like the small chunks, trying to trick our brains is a really good thing, right? So I would say
Mm.
play the second section and then play the third section. Like this is a like this is very common for beginners and actually like more advanced players is like there are lots of people who can only play something from the beginning.
Yeah.
And if yeah, the straight line, right? And if they mess up a quarter of the way in, they just totally, can't play the rest of it, right?
Yeah, so
And
true.
so like doing things in these smaller chunks where it's like um like it's funny. I don't find that like I'm not really a talent kind of guy. Like I don't believe in talent really.
I'm the same.
Um
Yeah.
yeah, nice. Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm like really an advocate for anyone who really like wants to play. It doesn't matter your experience, if you can break things down. Um but what I think I am really good at, and maybe it's a talent, I don't know, but I didn't start this way, but I'm really good at solving problems on the guitar, right?
Man, I love that about teaching. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of it comes from you having those problems when you were a student and you were less advanced, and it's like for me it's actually kind of a passionate anger because there was like no one around to teach me. Like the internet wasn't really what it was. Well, I started in 1999, and we're actually the same age, we just realized,
Yeah.
but it's like just not the same. Now it's just every little resource is at your fingertips,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
like a good thing and a bad thing.
right, exactly. Like I tell my students, like, get off of YouTube. I'm sorry, I know this is on YouTube, but
No,
it's like,
no, man, it makes so
practice
much
your
sense. I
guitar.
agree. I agree. Yeah.
It's the YouTube black hole, I call it. It's just like it's like you click on the one thing and then you're on the other thing. So like my hobby is to cook. I just love to cook.
Nice.
And I've been dating somebody for a few months now, and it's really fun to have somebody that you're dating and you can cook for and you can try new recipes. But like it's so crazy because you can go down the black hole in any of these things and just get so lost in it. Like luckily that is my like fun time. But if I
Yeah.
were a guitar student again, and it's like you want to like really pick and choose what you're practicing, and um, we've kind of bounced around this, but like have a practice log, so like the things that I talked about so far, have your right hand exercises, have your left hand exercises.
Yeah.
So to me, they're like categories, like the warm up category, the technique category, which include those type of things, or say you're a little bit more advanced, you're working on your chord shapes, your scale shapes, arpeggios, those kind of things. Have that all in there. Have little exercises in each. Then you get into like repertoire and song learning, and you say, okay, cool. I'm working on these three different tunes, and like, oh, this one is like really close to being performance ready, and this one is like brand new, and this one is kind of like in between, right? And so you like kind of chip away at each of those. And then I have like a fourth kind of like category that's considered musicianship skills. And that's like, say, improving your ability to read music if you want to do that, or read tab, or understand music theory. And so like if you're constantly going down the YouTube black hole, you're actually putting too much information into your brain, and you're not actually practicing any of
Oh man, it's
it.
so true. Like, and could you imagine? Like, let's use the cooking here. Like, I doubt it happened that at any stage you turn around to your girlfriend and said, "Listen, I had planned to make this nice curry for us, but I made a bit of the curry, but then I got distracted and I found this other recipe. So I have a bit of a soup, and there's a small bit of dessert here, so we kind of have a bit of everything. It's like with the songs, it's the same thing. I often share the story of somebody I taught once who they'd usually like in another video talking with the teacher. Nowadays, like our job as teachers has translated into players now coming in with some skills and some technique and some ideas, and we gotta like take what they know and try and put structure to it. And like somebody could come in and they might go, I learned Karma Police this week. I didn't do the practice, but I learned Karma Police. I learned this and that, and then when you dig deeper, it's like you learned a bit until you got stuck. Then you hit the next thumbnail, and the next, and the algorithm knows. Like the algorithm knows what chords some players out there know. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, that comes back to kind of like that it's just that problem solving, right? It's like
Yeah.
you're a new guitarist, you're a intermediate guitarist, you're an advanced guitarist, you are gonna hit a snag. Everyone is, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like how do you like work around that snag? Well, for me it was like, all right, figure out what the snag is. Is it my right hand? Am I messing this up? Is it some technique? I mean, the amount of like technical exercises I made up because I sounded so bad on like a particular part of a song or whatever. I mean, it's like, so yeah, I mean, it's wild how deep you can go, but like if you can solve problems and figure out why you're sounding bad, you can do anything. You could play anything.
That's the thing, and like, students, like my main hope as a teacher is that students learn how to troubleshoot their own playing, and I'm there to kind of the guide on the side to help them troubleshoot the
Mhm.
thing that they don't know how to troubleshoot yet. Like, did you have a guitar teacher at all then, Daniel, or was it all self-taught up to a certain age?
Yeah, so so I started when I was 13, and I had probably about 6 months or 8 months where I just played by myself, and I played from tabs online, and I bought
Mm.
books, tab books,
Yeah, remember
um,
those?
because really like Ultimate Guitar was not too together yet. There were guitar forums that I posted on, but yeah, I think most of it was like I bought guitar tab books, and so then I got a teacher, but it was one of like these kind of like music store teachers who was really good, but he just like he was so lackadaisical and didn't care and didn't like understand my level of passion.
Okay.
And so then I ended up moving to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and there ended up being some more people. And I studied with this guy who was an excellent classical guitarist. And again, that was not my passion, but I thought it was going to be very helpful for me, and I think it was, um, to kind of go down that path and learn the technical aspects of things. So he was really good. He's funny. He's like the type of person that takes the classical guitar notation, and standard notation, and the way he learns those tunes is he tabs them out. So he'll
Yeah.
tab out an entire like Bach Allemande or the Baroque suite, all this stuff. He'll tab the entire thing out, and he actually writes the rhythm in too. So and it's all
Oh
handwritten. I
man.
mean, he's a nut, but he was probably my first like good guitar teacher, and and then from there it kind of expanded. And um, the probably the best thing I ever did was again, like there's in North Carolina where I was living, there just weren't that many people, or I didn't know them, and social media didn't exist, and I was just like a young shy kid, right? And
Mm.
so I saw that there was this um, workshop called the National Guitar Workshop, and they had these different campuses around the states. And so after my first year of college, I went there for 1 week, and or maybe it was 2 weeks actually, and I was just so blown away. Like I had saved up my money from working a job, and it was like all these people from New York and Connecticut, and I saw some of those master classes that I had written, and it was just like incredible. And I ended up auditioning to like be an intern there, and
Nice.
so I went back for a total of 5 years. I went, and I would like because it was expensive. I would do things where I would be like a resident assistant at the dorm, and I would stay for 5 weeks, but I could take as many classes as I want and practice as much as I want. And like that was just so cool because like I'm still in touch with a lot of those teachers, and
Great.
they're like world class players, from anything from like rock and roll players to really straight ahead jazz players to classical players to acoustic fingerstyle. And it was just like you could choose any of those classes. Um, and that was probably the most pivotal thing because I got to study and see so many different perspectives.
And you're in an
Um,
environment too that you're going to thrive. Yeah.
yeah, I also met a really big mentor of mine. He's the guy who ended up uh, bringing me to New Orleans for my graduate degree and got me like a full ride and stuff. Um,
Nice.
And so he like was like a really long time mentor of mine and really like helped me get some things together on the
Brilliant, man.
guitar.
That's so yeah. It does matter, and I definitely feel nowadays that's something that players on the internet do miss in some respects. It's that being in a room with the person and that influence and that association and that ability to ask questions. Like for example, like I'm sure you find this as well that people ask you things on your YouTube channel and they're reaching out and the whole thing is going, oh, like, there's the big, as I call the big three, Andy Guitar, Justin Guitar, Marky Music, like those are the three head honchos of, like, if you search things that usually pop up. And at the end of the day, when people still can't get questions answered, and then they tend to go to smaller channels and ask these questions. And man, some of the stories you get from people about, like, you could put up a lesson and the way it's helped somebody with something in their life. It's quite amazing, like, So
That's
it's
so cool. Yeah.
and just the only reason I'm sharing that is because what you're saying there about figures and like mentors and things, it's not as common nowadays for players, and I kind of wonder where will it end up as guitar
Yeah,
moves.
totally. I would say that, just as advice to people who are out there, you know, the cool thing is that the world is much smaller now. Like, so for me, when I moved to New Orleans to go to grad school, they paid me to go, but it wasn't very much money, right? It was just a little stipend. And so I
Yeah.
was already a professional like gigging and playing musician. I uh and teaching, so like I went through this period, where I was playing like several hundred gigs a year. Like in 2012 I played about 300 gigs.
Wow.
And I was still teaching a bunch also, but it was just like I wanted that experience to be playing out and like doing that kind of stuff. But fast forward, like it was like a lot of background music gigs and stuff like that. Um, and so I ended up deciding, I kind of got bored with where I was living. I was like, man, I need a new challenge. And this mentor that I had met all the way back in 2005 was like, come to grad school in New Orleans. And New Orleans is just this amazing music town. So the cool thing is, I was like, hey guys, I'm going to go and do this. Like, I'd love to keep teaching you. Can we move online? And so this is 2018. I'd already been teaching
Wow.
online private lessons. I had done not Zoom, but Skype for years and years and years. And then I kind of moved everybody to Zoom. And when I moved down there, and I was still teaching, say 20 hours a week, I was teaching as much as I could and do school. And then I
Yeah.
started playing 3 days a week at BB King's down there, which was fun.
Ah,
But
class.
but the the point of all this is that the world is much smaller. Like if you find a good teacher who like can teach online, like for me, I've like really worked to dial it in. Like so, like clearly, Dave, if you and I wanted to play right now, it wouldn't work very well because there's going to be a lag, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but you can work around things like that. So for me, I realized, oh, cool. Like I had already been building backing tracks in Ableton Live for years, and I was like, oh, I so and people had already been using Box.com, which is similar to like Dropbox or Google
Yeah.
Drive or whatever. I just
Oh, I
I just
remember it, yeah.
prefer it. Yeah. Um, and so everyone had their individual folder, and like nowadays, like I never plan to teach in person again. So like I have dialed it in where I can put together a backing track. Like say somebody's having trouble changing between G and E minor. I
Mm.
can put together a backing track with drums and bass in a couple minutes, drop it in their folder, they can download it, and if they don't have something like Ableton, they could play it on this like looper that I have online that I can send them. And I can hear them playing on their end and hear them actually trying to make the changes or and whatever it might be, like maybe they're working on their improvising or whatever. But like the biggest thing is I actually think I'm a better teacher online now than I am in person because I'm normally sitting this way and I'm looking at three screens and
Wow.
student is here, the student's notes are here, and like I can say, okay, cool, yeah, here's an assignment, or hey, here's a thought. And so they're getting all these notes. uh what I found recently is recording the entire lesson doesn't actually make as much sense as like recording the little exercises that I want them to work on, just so they have them very directly right there.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like I say, hey, so I want you to work on this exercise. I press record, I play it, and I drop it in their folder, and so everything is right there for them all week long, and it sounds good, it looks good. They can download their backing tracks, they got PDFs, they have lesson notes. So the point of all of that is like if you can find a good teacher who has it kind of dialed in, like look for those mentors online too. Don't feel like you just have to
Yes.
find somebody locally, because for me it was like really hard to find people locally for a long time.
I bet, yeah, there's some really, really rural parts out there. Um,
Yeah.
it is quite amazing, yeah, and especially with technology now and the paradigm of, like, I remember for a while I wanted to move online because back in 2015 I was going around doing marathons here and there, and I
Hmm.
still wanted to continue teaching, but the overall paradigm was that online lessons that's kind of odd. It's kind of weird, and now with COVID, like it's so normal, and everybody has used Zoom at least once, and they know how to log on
Yeah.
and this and that.
It was amazing, man, because once I was in New Orleans, and I had basically 2 years before COVID hit, so I was dialing it in. So when COVID hit, I actually made a course on how to teach online
Oh, brilliant!
effectively. Yeah, because a lot of people. I mean, that this upsets me because I care about teaching so much. But the person who lost all their gigs and all of a sudden they're a guitar teacher. I mean, it's like you got to make money, I understand, but like then they just throw up their iPhone or their
Yeah,
iPad or whatever like right here, and it's like, and then the person, they just play through a bunch of stuff, and then the person doesn't get any kind of material for later. They have no reference, it's not recorded, like that kind of stuff is just like, no, like go out of your way.
and it's so true because a lot of times when that happens, the student comes away from the experience and thinks it was them. Like they'll go, obviously I can't learn guitar, and it's that well,
Totally.
you know.
Yeah, yeah, and they can't learn guitar, and that online lessons are bad.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. The big one is the feedback. Like I'm fully aware creating lessons. I try and mention as much as I can about the best technique to lay down for it that I know of. At the end of the day, I don't know how it looks the other end. It's only when somebody sends on a video. Now I do a thing where like if somebody does email me with the problem, I'd be like, here's this link. Just send on a quick video yourself, like 30 seconds playing it, and I'll give you a bit of feedback. But it's
Totally.
as since we're the same age, it's amazing, man, how quick the internet has accelerated guitar teaching and where it will go. Like it's it's yeah, I can't
It's
even put it
pretty
into words.
pretty cool. Yeah, and you and I are kind of at a similar place where we're trying to build, like kind of a subscription kind of thing,
Yeah,
and
100%.
it's great. Yeah, for me, it's like I love teaching one-on-one, but I like want to help more people, and also there are only so many hours in a day. Like I remember there were times where I would teach 10 hours and still feel like a human being, but man, teaching 10 hours in a day nowadays, I just feel like a blob afterwards. It's just a lot.
I know, man. I know yeah. I don't like to think of age as being a thing that's making me less able to do things, but definitely a few hours teach. Like I used to teach 3 to 9, sometimes without a break, and I used to be fine. Then I go and play a gig,
Yeah,
and then I
totally.
do it again,
No
and
break.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like now, like, oh man, I've been sitting for a while and back's
Yeah,
going
yeah.
sore.
Oh, 2 hours. I need a break. I need to go do something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, it's really and so your own, so you have a service helping people learn how to teach online, and then you also have a free ebook that viewers can grab as well, if I understand that correctly. Do you want to share a bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So, I wrote this ebook a little while back, and I remember part of it was inspired by a lesson that Marty Schwartz posted. And of course, Marty's great. He's a
Yeah,
super nice guy. But I remember back then it was like I was playing out of all the boxes, the pentatonic boxes, right?
yeah,
And I was just like feeling really stuck. And I ended up, it was because I was teaching and I was trying to give people fresh stuff. And like essentially, he taught this lesson, excuse me, where he played, I don't even remember if he used the words diagonal, but a minor pentatonic scale across the fretboard that way rather than straight across the frets, right? So it
Mm.
kind of goes up the neck and across the strings at the same time. And it was interesting. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Let me start teaching that. And I started teaching it, and I was playing it all the time. And then I realized that, oh, well, yeah, that's just like one of the things, but there's so many like amazing principles that are right there because the way the guitar works, right? So like I was like, oh, cool. I can break this down. You know, he was teaching us this big chunk. I was like, oh, well, it's essentially like two notes, which I ended up calling a two-note set, and three notes I call a three-note set, and they're always separated by a whole step. And the amazing thing is if you know your fretboard decently, you can literally play that scale anywhere. So that's in the key of A, right? And my ring finger is the root note. All of this is really clearly laid out in this ebook,
Lovely.
by the way. But like if I find an A anywhere, like this is obvious because it's just 12 frets up, but oh cool, there's that full octave of the scale. Okay, well I could play it off of this A. Cool. This one's a little weird, but I can play that. I can play it here. And I just realized that, oh wow, okay, that's cool. So no matter what, if I'm playing this two note set plus three note set, I get a 2-3 pattern, right? That gives
Yep.
me minor pentatonic. And then as I play up, it's always alternating just twos, threes, twos, threes, twos, threes. Same from here. 2, 3, 2, 3, 2. And then, say I wanted to play the notes on the sixth string, I would just play a 3 there. Because it's always going to be alternating twos and threes.
That's cool.
That's for the minor pentatonic. Well, the cool thing is like that it works for the major pentatonic as well. You would just play 3-2 instead of 2-3.
Yeah.
So this one you'd start right on it. So say I wanted to play an A major pentatonic, I go 3, 2, 3, 2. I mean, there's great songs like
Yeah, yeah.
it's right there. Um, and then and you can check out in the ebook. But then I realized all these other neat things where like they're very consistent things. Like if I don't want to just play in that one shape, like I'm in major right now, A major. If I don't want to just play in that shape, at any point I can shift up or down into another area of the fretboard, and all I have to do is move 3 frets. So it's like I call it the 3 fret shift.
Nice. It sounds so fluid as well. Like you can't really hear the I'm playing the box. Next box.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
It's nice.
And that it's really developed my sound as a guitarist so much, and made me a lot better. And then just all the fun stuff that where you can start adding in chromatics and stuff that is not in the book, but things like
Nice, man. Nice playing. I hope everybody knows
so
this
that's
is
all.
early morning playing as well. This is so good.
Yeah, not warmed up, not warmed up.
Man, geez, no need to warm up. Sounds great. Um, and what that's really cool. And then with where can people go to find out more about you? The links will be below this video, of course, but if you want to share it now.
Yeah, definitely. So you can download that ebook. So my name is a little tricky, but Daniel Serriff. It's like sheriff with no H, one R, two Fs. DanielSerriff.com. And if you want the free stuff, it's just danielserriff.com/free. And then on YouTube here, just Daniel Serriff. And yeah, look me up on social media as well. I have an Instagram and a Facebook, and I'm always sharing stuff and launching my own subscription site. And
Brilliant.
clearly Dave has a lot of skills. Not trying to plug mine over his or
Man,
anything
no
like
work
that.
away. There's work away. It's all good. What is it based on? Um,
Yeah, so the subscription site is called The Ideal Guitarist.
cool.
And kind of over the years, just teaching so much, I find that and I know you know this too, is it's like students just run into very similar problems. Like most guitar players have really bad rhythm,
Yeah.
and and they think that, it's like, oh, I have bad rhythm. Well, you only have bad rhythm because you don't know how to work on it. you know um, it's like there are things that you can do, so basically, what the ideal guitarist program is it's like a coaching program. So there's a Facebook group, and there's access to like all the courses I've created already and the courses that I am creating. You can go into the Facebook group, you can post a comment, a question. I'll answer it with either text or a video. And
Nice.
there's a nice community. One of my longtime students just posted a nice slide clip yesterday. This is brand new for me. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time, but yeah. So let me think about the other things. I have like hundreds and hundreds of backing tracks that I've created for people. Those tracks are included in the course, and yeah. So it's like kind of like it's not one on one, but it's some nice teacher, feedback if you want to post videos of yourself playing. And right now, what I'm doing is whenever somebody has a question, I make like a course quality video that goes into the course, so that when that person, ask a couple questions, that in the future those questions are already answered. So
Man,
I'm trying
that
to
is
build
great.
a yeah, trying to build just, excuse me, having like a really great library to just help people solve their problems, because as you know, many people have the same problems that happen on the
I know.
guitar.
That's yeah. That's like with the acoustic guitar. Like my one is going to be for a beginner guitarist doing acoustic, and like that was the
Sweet.
big one. I used to find same questions, and the platform I'm using is Searchy. What are you using to host yours on?
Cool. Yeah, so mine's on the Kajabi platform.
Oh, that's on Kajabi too. Lovely, lovely. Sorry, I was cool. I forgot
Oh yeah,
Kajabi.
so
Yeah,
oh sorry, yeah, so there is a Facebook group,
yeah.
but then the rest of it is hosted on Kajabi, yeah.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, look, we'll put the link below that as well for everybody to find out. Because seriously, geez, you're you're a man who practices. Anybody watching can tell that. But no,
Thanks,
that's
man.
great. Listen, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you, Daniel, and hopefully we can do it again. And that was only beginner guitar and a lot of other elements. And for everybody watching, it will be time marked. So any particular topics you want to check out, they'll be listed below the videos. So Daniel, thanks so much.
Dave, so thank you so much for having me. It was great to be here, and thanks for the great questions. And yeah, man, take care.
Thanks.